guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this cute and easy to sew stretch fabric skater dress. I used about 2 yards of a stretch fabric for my size large dress, but I'd suggest getting a little bit more fabric, especially if you're bigger than a size large or you want a long length or long sleeves. So let's get started sewing. To cut out your skirt, fold your fabric in half once and then fold it in half again. Line up any stripes if you're using stripes for a symmetrical skirt. Using a circle skirt pattern, line up the straight edges of the pattern with the folds of the fabric and then pin. Since your skirt pattern measurements are for woven fabric that doesn't stretch, you'll need to make up for the extra give in your stretch fabric by cutting the waist 1.5 inches above the pattern for a better fit and a cinched waist. Cut to your desired length plus a 1/2 inch hem allowance and then put aside. Find a well-fitting dress or top to use as a bodice template. Fold the top in half and then pin to keep it in place. Fold your fabric in half and you have to make sure that the stretch of the fabric is perpendicular to the fold of the fabric, meaning that the fabric will stretch horizontally across your body. I like to pin my stripes in place to keep them even, but you can skip this if you're not using stripes. Pin your dress to the fabric with the folds of both fabrics matching up. Cut about a 1/2 inch wider around the neck and arms for seams. I made sure to cut below the waistband on my dress since our new dress won't have a waistband. I also cut 1.5 inches wider on the sides because my pink fabric isn't as stretchy as the blue dress. Remember, it's easy to take in the top if it's too big, but you can't add fabric if you cut it too small. Cut a second bodice piece from the first, and if you want a lower back or neckline, trim it now. Trust me, it's a lot easier to do it now than later like I did. Pin and sew the shoulder and side seams with a ballpoint needle using a stretch stitch or zigzag stitch if your machine doesn't have stretch, removing the pins as you sew. This stitch allows you to stretch the seams without popping stitches. Try on the bodice and make sure it fits. If the top is too big, make any alterations now by taking it in. I found there was too much fabric on my shoulders, so I decided to trim them down because I'll be adding sleeves later and I didn't want fabric bunching. Our goal is for it to look cute, not frumpy. I wanted a lower back, so I went ahead and trimmed the fabric here, but like I said earlier, it's much easier to trim the fabric before you sew the pieces together. You can find more in-depth and technical tutorials on making sleeve patterns, but the way I created mine is with a few easy measurements for a straight line that will be cut on the fabric fold, a bell-shaped curve, and a diagonal line. While you have your bodice on, measure from the outside shoulder seam down to where you want the sleeve to end on your arm. Then draw a straight line equaling this number from the top of the curve, adding 1 inch for seam and hem allowance. Next, measure around your arm where you want the sleeve to end, divide that number by 2, and add 1 inch for seams to get the measurement for the bottom of the sleeve. Now wrap the tape measure around your arm right underneath your armpit, divide that number by 2, and add 1 inch for seams. Make a mark for this measurement and then connect with a diagonal line from there to the bottom of the sleeve. Finally, measure the curved armhole of the bodice. Mine was about 9 inches with seam allowance. Using your own number, draw a bell curve shaped like mine at the top of the measurements you already have drawn to complete the pattern. Now you have a basic sleeve pattern that will work perfectly for the stretch fabric, and you can always alter it too if you ever need to. Pin your pattern with the straight edge lining up against the fold of your fabric and cut out. I originally created my pattern for 3/4 sleeves but wanted short sleeves here, so I just folded my pattern up and cut. Repeat for a second sleeve. Fold your sleeve in half, right sides together, and then pin and sew along the straight edge with a stretch stitch. Place a pin in the center top of the sleeve to mark for later. Take the seam you just sewed on the sleeve at the bottom of the bell shape and line it up against the seam on the bodice where your armpit would be. Line these up right sides together and then open up and flatten the seam allowances and pin them together. Line up the center top of the sleeve that you marked with a pin a few moments ago to the outside shoulder seam of your bodice and pin in place, again flattening out the seam allowance as you pin. You'll now have the top and bottom of the sleeve pinned to the shoulder and side seams of the bodice, so now you'll want to pin in smaller sections all around the armhole and sew with a stretch stitch. Repeat for the second sleeve. To hem the sleeves, fold over the raw edge of the fabric about 1/4 inch and then fold over again another 1/4 inch so that the raw edge is trapped under the rolled fabric. Pin into place around the entire sleeve and then sew with a stretch or zigzag stitch. I used a decorative stretch stitch because not only did it look great, but it flattened out the fabric so it would lay neatly against my arm without looking too bulky and thick. Repeat on the other sleeve. Pin and sew around the neckline in the same way to create a nicely finished bodice piece. Using pins, mark where the center front and center back of the bodice waist is and where you want the center front, back, and sides of the skirt to be. With your skirt facing right side out and your bodice facing right side in, slide the skirt through the neckline so that the waists of the skirt and top meet and the fabrics are right sides together. Then match up the center front of the skirt to the center front of the bodice and pin them together. Repeat so you have the center back and sides pinned together as well. The waist of my bodice is a bit wider than the waist of my skirt, but this actually isn't a problem at all because we're working with stretch fabric. I just stretched out the fabric in between the pins so the fabrics are the same size and then pinned evenly in smaller increments around the entire waist so that when I sew the waist together, the fabric will be spaced evenly, and as you can see here, there won't be any big uneven gathers, and in the end it will create a nice cinched waistline. Sew the waist with a stretch stitch, stretching the fabric between the pins evenly as you go. The fabric is now gathered evenly together, and thanks to that handy stretch stitch, no stitches will pop as you put it on. Because let's face it, nobody likes to hear that dreaded noise in the dressing room. The finish line's in sight. To hem the skirt, pin a few inches of a rolled hem, just like with the sleeves. Pinning and hemming a circle skirt can take quite a while, so my suggestion is to start sewing where you pin and then roll the hem as you go. Even if it's a little tricky at first, you'll get in a groove of sewing a bit, folding the fabric, and sewing some more. Trust me, this will really speed up the process because I don't know about you, but I'm really excited to wear this dress. Also, don't forget to backstitch when you sew any of the seams or hems, and I just used the same decorative stretch stitch to keep my dress cohesive. Congratulations, you've just made your very own dress. Now strut your stuff, do a little spin, and don't forget to tell everyone you made your own dress. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more, and I'd love to see your creations, so if you make this dress, please post them on the Comic Cat Creations Facebook wall. Bye! Ooh, it's hot out here. Whoa, bee. Jeez.